Hi, this is P. Christopher Music, the Financial Prosperity Coach, and this is the Quarterly Strategic Insight Call. But instead of being on a call today, I wanted to have a little presentation for you to give you the overriding principle of why it is so important to operate as a private practice millionaire, to actually get that in your head as an identity, something from which, a role that you operate from. And it has everything to do with the quality of your life and your financial prosperity. So what I want to talk to you about today is the location from which you operate. Now understand there are three different levels from which you operate within your economic and financial life. Now, if you recall our basic concepts, you remember that we have our household is a business. Now that is a concept that I know you understand, but I want to go over it really briefly again so you fully duplicate and understand that this is an enterprise, this household entity that you have with your spouse or significant other, children, and all of the economic activity related to that entity. So first of all, remember that you have a household here. This household is a business. Don't forget, it has income and expenses, it has assets, liabilities, it has executives and staff. It records its financials every year to a government agency, profit loss statement, income statement, and so on, a balance sheet, and those are reported to the IRS, which is embodied in your Social Security number as a tax ID number, and you are operating as a business entity. Now, from that position, we then have other economic activities that are owned and or controlled by the household or the members within the household. So don't forget, we have your professional practice. And this is a practice, a business enterprise that you spend the majority of your day operating in, but you actually control it from the household, since the owner is a household or members thereof. You also have like retirement plans. Okay, retirement plans or other investments that you have and that's business activity. Investing is a business activity, and when you have a retirement plan that's invested in mutual funds or stocks or something like that, you're investing as a professional in those business enterprises, and you have a role to play and you get exchanged for that. Then you have other assets like potentially real estate. Real estate can be investment real estate like apartments or single-family homes, or it can be commercial real estate, like your practice where it is housed, or other real estate that you might own. Then you have any other assets of value. These other assets could be intellectual property, like trademarks you own, or any kind of copyrights, or anything that might be collectible, like art or jewelry or things like that. So all of these assets are owned and controlled by this household entity. So they are junior, or what we call subsidiary business activities. Now here's what happens. When you strive to say, hey, I'm not in control of my business, I need to make more money. As a private practice practitioner, you said, I want to go into business for myself. Good, so you did. But then what happened? You got into the business. So from where are you operating? You're operating right here in the practice. As a matter of fact, you're probably operating below the practice. Now, why would I say that? If the practice controls you, then you are not in control of the practice. If control shows the relative height, you are actually operating below the practice, because the practice and all the problems related to it are controlling you. So you're actually operating right here. Now, how much effect are you going to have on everything else as far as this economic well-being if you're operating down here, embedded inside the practice, trying to handle the day-to-day problems? Well, you're not going to be too effective. So why is it then that when we operate with the practice being what we think is the reason why for financial prosperity, why it ends up controlling us? Well, because we don't know how to run the practice, which is why we're so big on business consulting, why we're so big on business coaching, learning and building systems and building maximum value. So we want you to be operating at least here, at the top of your practice, or even better yet, outside your practice from a position maybe right here or in your household, and pushing the control down into the practice, controlling it from above, rather than being controlled by it inside the practice. So here's where we find most people. Most people are embedded inside or below the practice. We don't have too many people that are operating the practice from above. Now, how do you know if you're operating the practice from above? Well, you have systems that are built, and you are in a position where you do not need to be there anymore. That's when you're in control of your business. Or you come and go as you please. That's when you're in control. If you're not there yet, you're buried in here. So that's the position from which you're operating and the level of influence you actually have. So what is the program, the method to get us out of the practice? Well, I've been talking to you about transition planning. Okay? And the Econologics transition plan is all about the step-by-step actions needed to get you out of your practice. That is the product, is to make that practice operating at maximum transition value for somebody else. And when you build that entity so that someone else will come by and give you a lot of money for it, guess what? You've pushed yourself out. You don't need to be there, because that's any practice where the owner does not have to be there is operating at a higher level than one where the practitioner must be in the practice to make it go. And you see, so we have to have that plan in place. Okay, good. So now we're operating outside the practice. Well, let's just say, for example, what's the entity that's operating and controlling the practice? The household. So now we're looking at, are you operating within the household? Well, let's take a look at it. How is your personal financial plan doing? Because you see, don't forget, all of these economic activities flow profits into the benefit of the household and its members. That's why you have them. There's no other reason to have them. There's no other reason to have a practice. There's no other reason to have any kind of investment account if it's not going to flow off profits for the benefit of the members of the household. But where are you within your household? Are you being controlled by it, or are you controlling it? I would maintain that if you're not a private practice millionaire, by our definition, it's controlling you. If you're not saving 10% of practice gross, if you're not debt-free, if you don't have a couple $1 million saved in assets that can't be lost to economic conditions, then it's controlling you to that degree. And that is the problem. You see, that's why we have the transition plan to get you free of your practice. The roadmap, the Econologics roadmap, or the household financial plan, is to get you free of the economic restrictions of a normal household business. Having to make the mortgage, having to make all the debt payments, having to borrow to pay taxes, and all the things that we hear about as non-optimum circumstances. Having an estate plan is in place, having assets protected, all of those things. So by doing this, once we operate at a high level on our transition plan, we're out of the practice. Once we operate at a high level on our roadmap, our personal financial plan, which, don't forget, is the business plan for the household, getting it to a high economic condition, then we can be free of the economic constraints where you can then operate at a much higher level of control. So here I have to ask the simple question. From where are you truly operating? Are you truly operating trying to handle the day-to-day stuff of your practice? Because this is where you are. And when you're buried into your practice, you're dealing with the problems of your practice. Okay? So that means we don't have enough cash flow. We don't have enough personnel. We can't afford to pay for more consulting. We can't save anything because we don't have any money. Okay, you're buried right here. Forget about this and forget about this. You're right here, and you're trying to influence your entire economic life by being buried inside these problems. We have to think bigger. So the way to do that is to get out of your practice, get your transition plan going, and implementing it so it doesn't control you. Then you move out into the household. When you're into the household plan, okay, is your estate plan up to date? Is your asset protection plan up to date? Are your investments cranking along and protected from investment losses? Are your taxes optimized? Are you debt free? Okay, those are the things to work on in the household. Once you get to the top of our financial prosperity index and you're operating at that optimal financial condition, guess what? You are now in control of your household business. Until then, you aren't. You simply aren't. Those are the problems you're dealing with. Yeah, I got my practice under control. Okay, good. That's fine. How's your retirement plan doing? Is it market crashes? You don't care? Now we got something. If you care, we're buried inside this. If you're looking at trying to get rates of return on investments, you're trying to figure out how to get the optimum portfolio or whatever, I'll tell you what, you're buried right here. This is where you're operating. You're not operating up here. So, private practice millionaires operate from a position of control and power. And the way to do that is to have a plan and implementation of things that get you extracted out of that business entity. So, once we get all of these subservient business activities under control, where they flow profit and power to the household, and get your household financial plan in such a condition that it doesn't restrict you, control you. When you're in that position, then you can operate from here, and you control the whole enchilada from here on down. And that is a position of financial freedom. That is when you have the time and the money to do whatever it is you want to do. And until we get to that point, we are buried, whether we realize it or not, in the problems of the household or in the problems of the practice. Or if we're trying to manage our own money or whatever, we're buried in the problems of their investment accounts. Or trying to manage real estate, we're embedded in the problems of that business. Do you follow? And as long as you're there, you'll never be truly free, because you have responsibilities and obligations that take your time, attention, and energy away from those things that you might otherwise do if you were out the top. So a private practice millionaire concept is all about getting you freedom from your practice and freedom from these economic restrictions so that you can pursue the life you want to have and you can live your art.